Hey everybody, it's Mandy from Chapel Forge. So I posted that I went to the produce auction, which was a new experience for us in this area. I've gone to produce auctions before, but I've never gone to this one. So it's about 30 minutes from our house, super close. It's really close to my friend Missy at Homesteading Roots. So that's convenient because we can go to the produce auction and then I can hang out with her for the day. And then the next day, then I preserve food. So, I mean, what is bad about that scenario? So today I am going to be doing onion pickles and I'm going to be freeze drying the tops of the onions. So I got two kinds of onions, which I showed in my auction video. I got these for 85 cents a pound and $1 a pound. 85 cents a bunch and $1 a bunch, which I thought was a fantastic deal. Onion pickles is something I would love to have on the shelf to put on top of salad, just kind of add into different meals. We could even just eat them as like a side, like if we're doing like a charcuterie kind of lunch or something, just something different from our typical cucumber pickles and zucchini pickles and squash pickles and all those other things. So I am really excited too that my freeze dryer is set up. So I had Zad and Matt set the freeze dryer up. And so that means I can get these tops in. So today I'm going to show you how to do onion pickles and I'm going to show you how to freeze dry the tops of your onions so that you don't lose out on all that delicious flavor because it is like the best powder to have on your shelf. All right, so pickling onions is really super simple and there is literally no waste in this process. So I have a bowl that I use for chicken scraps, which is basically the root. Okay, I have a bowl that I use to put my tops in, which is what we're gonna freeze dry and powder. And then I have a bowl to put my onions in, which is what we're gonna pickle. So I just have my big cutting board. I cut the ends off, they go in their bowl. I cut the tops off, they go in their bowl. I take the onion. If it's a big one like this, I'm just kind of cutting them into quarters. It doesn't have to be like an exact science, especially since the base of this is vinegar. I'm not like super worried about acidity or anything like that. But that's kind of it. So I'm just gonna work through getting that box of onions, and then I have 1, 2, 3. I have 3 more boxes of onions to go, and I'll just take you through the process of canning the onion pickles and then getting these in the freeze dryer. So the onion pickles are a 2-day process. They're sort of like pickles in that you need to cover them with salt, put them in cold water, and let them sit for 12 to 18 hours. So I'll kind of walk you through that a little bit. And basically you do that so that they don't become mush. I get a lot of questions about doing pickles because people will do pickles and they skip that step. The ball book, anything like this, like cucumbers or whatever, they always recommend that you do that. I've tried it both ways and I always wind up, the jars, when I first started canning, the jars that got soggy because I didn't do that step, we wind up turning into relish because they're just, I mean, the taste is there, but the texture is weird. I feel like I should note that I feel like all my videos I have disclaimers because I know I'm gonna catch some kind of crap about it. The roots that I'm feeding the chickens. People are always like, don't feed onions to your chickens, blah, blah, blah. Chickens will not, I've said this 400 times, chickens will not eat something they don't want to eat. So if you throw it to them and they're not interested, they're not gonna eat it. They're kind of like toddlers. Like they're gonna tell you what they like. So I would throw, honestly, these are mostly root anyway. So if they don't want that part, they're not gonna eat it. They are 100% gonna eat that root part. So throw it to them. If they don't want it, they're not gonna eat it. You may also find that your flock has like preferences and maybe you already know that they're not gonna eat onions, so you just throw those in your compost. So nonetheless, you should have no waste. Either these onion roots or whatever should become eggs or they should become soil. They should not become trash. All right, so I have 8 freeze dry trays. I have a medium freeze dryer. I will link it in the description. If you don't have a freeze dryer, you should 100% get one. It's like one of the best purchases I've ever made in my life. I'm so excited about it, like I can't even speak. Okay, so it holds 4 trays. I have 8 trays typically so that I can have 1 queued up and 1 in the freeze dryer. That's usually my process, especially in the spring, summer, fall. But obviously since I just set the freeze dryer up from moving today, I don't have anything in the queue. So I'm gonna put these in the freezer. I'm definitely gonna have probably, I'm guessing 4 runs of onion tops and skins for the freeze dryer. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna bag up the tops and skins that don't fit. I'll just pop them in the freezer, and then when these are done, I'll just reload and keep that process going. I don't want to just like let them sit on the counter because they'll just get wilty and moldy and weird because these will probably take, I mean, most things in the freezer take 18 to I mean, some things take up to 30 hours sometimes. So this will be like a multiple day process getting these onions done. So when they come out of the freezer, I'll show you how I do the powdering, and we're just gonna keep chipping away at getting these. All right, so I have the first run of onion tops and skins in the freeze dryer. I decided not to pre-freeze these. I think they'll be fine. It's not like it's ice cream or something that's at risk of melting. So they'll be fine. I have those in. It's in freezing mode. We're gonna be making this into a like little food preservation corner. So I'm really excited to get that ugly filing cabinet out of here. And then in the freezer, this is our pantry. I'll be doing a pantry tour soon. I'm really excited. We're almost done. We have one more fridge to bring in. In here, I have the trays that I'm freezing. So I'll link that rack in the description too, because that rack is the bomb. I have a couple other videos where I talk about that. So we have all of that stuff in. Really excited to be able to freeze that tomorrow. And it should be really pretty. We should get like a really nice, ooh, got a little dark. We should get a really nice green color out of that onion powder, which is gonna be exciting. All right, so all of my onions are cut and in my favorite huge stainless steel bowl. I have my scraps here for the chickens. I have all my bags ready to go into the freeze dryer when those are done, and I cycle through all those freeze dryer cycles. So the next step is to cover the onions with salt. So we're just gonna like sprinkle the salt on, shake it around, sprinkle some more salt, and then we're gonna cover them with cold water. All right, so I'm using just pink, Himalayan sea salt. You can do Redmond's real salt or whatever it is that you like. Table salt's really not a good idea. Coarse salt could work, I guess, but it might make it like the texture a little weird. So you're just gonna do like a light coating of salt on it, and then we're gonna cover it with cold water. All right, so I have them in the salt brine. The ball book does not call for you to refrigerate it, so you just do your cold saltwater brine for 12 to 18 hours. I'm just gonna cover it with a flour sack towel, and then we will work on canning this tomorrow, and I'll show you how to do that. It's super easy. All right, so our onions have been soaking in their salt brine overnight. They've probably been in the salt brine for close to 18, well, maybe like 15 hours. The book calls for 12 to 18, so I think that's fine. We're gonna drain these and rinse them, and then I'm gonna prepare the spices, and we are gonna get to canning these onion pickles. So I dumped my onions out of their bowl. I just put them in 3 colanders. When you can, I feel like you just naturally have lots of extras of things like strainers and colanders and bowls and whatever. So anyway, so I have these in here. I'm just gonna spray them down with the sink sprayer. It doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, you just wanna get like the excess salt water off. All right, so the recipe I'm using calls for 4 quarts of peeled onions. I'm assuming I have maybe 12 quarts, well, maybe like 8 quarts. I'm not really sure, but I do this often because a lot of the things in this, the only thing that really matters is the vinegar, and this is like all vinegar based, so I'm not really concerned that it's not going to be acidic enough. As far as like the spices and the flavorings and all that, you can play with all that. Sugar, salt, spices, none of those things affect the safety of the canning. The thing that affects the safety is the acidity and then how long that you water bath it for. So this one calls for salt, sugar, mustard seed, guys, horseradish. So I did horseradish, I did pickling spice, which I just buy this huge pack of, or container of pickling spice from the restaurant store. And it just has in spices, like there's no extra junk in it or whatever. So I used that. I used prepared horseradish, which I already had in the fridge, and I did sugar, and then the salt was just from the brine, so we didn't need to fuss with that. So I have my 2 gallons of vinegar and my spices going on the stove. And then basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna pack the onions into the jars and then pour the brine into the jars. All right, so I'm filling my canner with water. This simmered for 15 minutes. That's our brine. I washed our jars. They're hot, well, warm. They'll be fine. I'm packing the onions into the jars, and then we're gonna pour our brine over top of it. They want you to do a hot pack with your brine, according to the book. And then we'll put our lids and our rings on. You wanna leave a 1/4 inch headspace on these. They're just a standard pickle time. So 10 minutes for pints or half pints on these. I'm gonna do all pints, and we should be able to wrap this one up pretty quick. This might seem like a super simple tip, but typically what I do is I take my canning funnel with something big like this where you're not pouring like jam or sauce or something. And I'll just like drop a bunch in until it's like mostly full, move to the next one and fill it. And then when I'm done, like when I think I probably only have enough to cram in the tops, then I'll come back through and cram these down and get more in. But I want to get moving today because we're going to go to the livestock auction, and I'm hoping to find a goat that is pregnant so that I can have, my goat should be due in about a month. But I'm hoping to have another one because my goat milk soap sales have really picked up. So I would really love to have like an insurance policy and a backup goat for milk. So I'm trying to move along. Can we just admire for 1 second how pretty this is? This is like the best part of canning. So if you're new to canning, or maybe even if you're not, a canning funnel, canning ladle is the bomb. So it hooks onto your pot, which is fantastic, especially if you're doing something like applesauce or jam or something where it needs a, for 1 second, where it needs to like simmer and you have to babysit it. This is fantastic. It's also gigantic and it's easy to, sorry, they're like trying to grill and all kinds of things. Anyway, when I'm doing things that have pickling spices in them, a lot of times like you'll get everything floats to the top, of course. So what I'll do is I'll go through and I'll do like a drop in each jar. That way each jar gets a little bit of the spice, and then I'll go through and top it off with the brine. So that's what I'm working on right now. Also, when I was talking about the floaties in your pot, your peppercorns will always float to the top. All of the like mustard seeds and dill and like all those other things, they'll typically stay on the bottom. So basically the goal is just to get it as even as possible. When you're home canning, I mean, everything's gonna have its, even if you use the exact same recipe from year to year, you might have some variance. It's just how it's gonna be. But you just wanna try to get it as best you can. And I follow the same procedure with my brine as I do with my onions, so, or cucumbers or whatever you're doing. So I'll like fill them pretty well, and then I'll go through and top them off. And then same thing when I do the brine. So I make sure they all have like equal-ish amount of spice. Make sure that everybody's gonna get, you know, a good amount of the yummy liquid. I mean, you can see just with it simmering, it got like a beautiful color to it. Like it's not just a clear vinegar anymore. The beauty of doing pickles is if you run a little short on your brine, you can always just top it off with vinegar. Like if you only need like a little quarter or half-inch amount of vinegar to hit your quarter-inch headspace, you can just top it off with a little white vinegar or apple cider vinegar. I said red vinegar. Apple cider vinegar or whatever it is that you want. I mean, and it's not going to affect the flavor if you're only using like a teeny amount just to get to your correct head. All right, so I have all these topped off with brine that is seasoned. They look beautiful. I am like kind of in love with the color of all of this. So I'm going to wipe the rim. You want to try to wipe the rim as best you can. And then you're going to put on your lid and ring and we'll drop them in the can. All right, so I got my lids and rings on all of these. Wipe the rims, lids and rings, finger tight. Don't over tighten them. You want to have your racks and your canners. You never want to have your glass directly touching the heat. If you don't have racks like these, most of the times, even if you find them at like the thrift store, they usually come with one. They're not that expensive if you need one, and seriously look at the thrift store because I see them there all the time for cheap. But you can just like, if you have a bunch of extra rings from other projects, you can like band them together and they can sit on that. I've seen people use dish towels, which I'm not a huge fan of because it's like cloth on heat, but whatever. See if you can't find a rack at your local thrift store. Anyway, so we're gonna drop these in. The book calls for them to be water bath canned for 10 minutes. So I'm gonna drop them in. When the water starts boiling, we'll start the timer for 10 minutes. I have a couple jars that are these tall ones that are still pints. You can see that the water's not covering it. So I definitely need to add some more water to this. Sometimes people keep like a boiling tea kettle going or whatever. I'm just gonna add some hot water from the tap and then wait for this to come back to a full boil. So as I mentioned, I wanna get to the livestock auction. So I have both canners going and I'm gonna have one more round to throw in. All right, so we got 28 pints of onions, which I'm pretty excited about. I think this will be the perfect amount to put on the shelf. That'll give us like a jar every other week for the next year. Next video I'll have coming at you is going to be on canning rhubarb. So I'm finishing that up and I'll give you all the good details on how to get that canned. See you next time.